different investigators. They're usually physician scientists at different research centers. And then I work with them, like today, I met with a woman in Australia and I presented what our study design is to see if she has any interest in working with us. And so I design in those types of studies, and then I monitor the patients while they're on the study. I clean the data, and then I interpret and analyze the data for publications, for presentations. I think in this past year, I've probably presented work at maybe 6 or 7 different conferences. I'm working on a publication right now. I published one paper in December. I'm working on a second publication right now. So I'm doing a lot of the science work in which I was trained to do, but now instead of doing it in animals or at the bench side, I'm doing it in patients. And I'm working with amazing physicians from all over the world, and I'm working to find cures or treatments for patients with cancer. So it's very fulfilling in the heart. Them trying to find something to help patients have more years and better quality of life with their disease or potentially a cure. So that's kind of been my path.
Wow, that's really cool. I love how your path was, there's so many different aspects to it and like changes, and that's really amazing. It's like
Oh,
oh yeah, so we're gonna open up to some questions now, if that's okay with the rest of the audience. Um, I could start off maybe. You seem to like have a lot of different pathways and a lot of different transitions throughout this whole career. Do you have like any advice for us as we're going into that as high school students, maybe who are a little unsure about what we want to do, but you wanted to go into medicine, but figuring out our way into the STEM world?
yeah. I mean, I think being open to different things, like for example, I never worked in a lab before, and then I got that job at
Hmm.
NASA, and they basically kind of taught me how to do all the stuff. And I just think kind of being open um, to different opportunities and to explore, and to also what they have something called transferable skills. So like I was a bench scientist. In graduate school, I did gene therapy. I made clones of genes. That was my area, putting in different genes and testing them. Oops. In particular, in an area of liver disease. But I was looking at the collagen promoter, how to regulate that promoter. And so for like liver fibrosis or wound healing, even when cuts and things like that, how we can regulate those types of things. So they were very specific to being a bench scientist. I used radioactivity. I was doing everything, but trying to figure out what the transferable skills that I can transfer into my next role. Like I said, I joined medical affairs. They didn't really care what skills I had in the lab. They didn't really care what assays I had been trained on. But so I had to curtail my transferable skills into like, oh, I'm really good at analyzing data and presenting it. I'm really good at explaining very complicated things in a very easy manner for people to understand. Like I had to kind of transfer things to be able to catapult myself. And I actually spent a lot of time helping other PhDs transfer out of the lab into these types of roles. And I'd say that's one of the hardest things, is figuring out what could be what skills you have that could be transferred. That, like, for example, designing a study, whether it's with animals, which is whether you're doing experiment in cells, or if you're doing, whatever, that's what I do now, except it's in humans. So being able to transfer that, oh, I know how to design, research, come up with a hypothesis, design the experiment, blah, blah, blah. Those are transferable skills. So making sure that you always walk away with knowing what could be transferred to the next opportunity is important.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the floor?
I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. So now that you've gone through all this like schooling and education, can you tell us about like what your daily schedule looks like and what you do in your profession every day?
Yeah, I want to say something about getting higher education. It takes a lot of work. It's a sacrifice. All your friends are going to be getting married, having kids, they're going to have jobs, and you're still going to be in school. So it's a sacrifice. But what I can tell you is it all pays off for sure. So at my current job, as I said, I'm a drug developer at a pharmaceutical company. I have been working at large companies. Some of them you may know the names of, like Amgen, Bristol Myers Squibb, things like that. But I have focused my career in the last 10 years to work in very small companies. So the company I'm at now, there was 7 of us. I know my niche now. I like really small companies. We just bought a company, so we're bigger. We're like 85 people now. But I kind of found my way. I noticed that moving from, so it's really great to start off at a big company because you kind of learn the ropes, and there's training mechanisms, there's all kinds of things to support you. But when you go into a startup company, it's high risk, high reward. They expect you to know how to do things. They don't want to spend time training you. You got to like know what you're doing. So you need a little bit more expertise for that. I would say every day is a little bit different. I support 4 different clinical trials at my company. I also developed the clinical development plan, like what indications we're going to go with for these drugs. And then I have a lot of support team. I have a big support team. So I'm the developer, but there's there's an operations team that operationalize the protocols I write. They go to like vendors and say, oh, we want to collect blood on this day and tumor on that day and blah, blah, blah. And they actually make that all happen. I don't do that part. So I'm only strategy, design, and then they execute. So they're my partners. Other partners of mine is because we get data and it goes into a database. I have a database manager that I work with to pull data for me, or I go in and look at the data and ask them to help me understand something, or why did it get entered this way or that way. And then, as I said, I do analysis. So I work with a statistician, and they help me again with the endpoints that we're looking at, how we can determine if a study was successful or not successful. So each of my day is really different depending on, because I'm in different like one study is just opening, one study is closing down. So they're different meetings. Today I'm speaking with you. I spoke with a lady in to see, we're still recruiting for one of our studies, looking for sites, investigators that want to work with us. So I met with her today. I practice a talk I'm giving tomorrow morning because I'm opening a study at a site. So I do different kind of things every day. It depends. Sometimes I'm just doing analysis. I'm writing a manuscript right now. But one of the things that I like in my role is to have many different things going on. So I'm doing I wear lots of different hats here. At a big pharmaceutical company, you would be doing the same thing over and over again, which is why I kind of got a little bit boring. Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So you've mainly been talking about how your career, like all your career and the things that you do at your job, but I'm wondering how you balance this with your personal life and your
Great
kid.
question. Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I didn't finish graduate school until I was 35. I knew I started at 28, I finished at 34 actually. I knew I was the kind of person, first of all, I just was heads down kind of person. I really wasn't interested in like, I had a lot of guy friends. I was never really interested in like dating and things like that. And no one really was asking me out, frankly. So I was just kind of heads down person. And so that's kind of a part of my life I did put off for a long time. I got married at 44. Ella was at my wedding. I had my kids at 48 using fertility. I had to seek out fertility because, so the fact is, when I look back at my career, as a woman, you don't have to do all those things. You don't have to postpone everything. There are plenty of girls that I knew that were in medical school. I would say my 3 best friends are all doctors. They all were on the same path as me. We got married in our 40s. We had kids in our 40s. We all used the same fertility doctor, and we all met our husbands online, which is kind of how life is today, I guess. But there are plenty of other people that I know that did both simultaneously. It's tough. But I will tell you, don't miss out on having kids because it's wonderful. How I manage my life now, I do it's not ideal. I mean, if I had a perfect world, I'd be a stay-at-home mom and watch my kids, but that's not how it works. So I actually have a live-in au pair. She's from Brazil. She watches my kids only when I'm working. So some days I take them to school, some days she takes them to school, like Thursdays and Fridays, she takes them to school. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I take them to school. Drop off is kind of like my favorite part of the day. I get them ready, I cook breakfast, and I drop them off. And then she picks them up from school. I have twins, they're in kindergarten. And she takes them to their activities, like they're in a STEM thing at the Y, they're in a sports thing, they play soccer, whatever. She takes them to all those things. And then I meet back up with them around 6 and I cook dinner, I do homework and get them ready for bed and stuff like that. So do I wish I had more time to spend with them? Yes. My current job does allow me to spend some time in their classroom volunteering, which my kids really love when I do that. They're so proud to see me there. So I know it's very meaningful. And also I just signed up to be their baseball coach. They're playing t-ball and I'm the head coach. So I do get to do family things with them. Really, my weekends are all about my kids and family. So that's okay. So it is a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice that I'm doing it this way.
That's amazing. I think that's like a really nice way, like you're balancing it and like really being involved in their lives. But to wrap things up, I wanted to ask you, I'm obviously very aware that you're so passionate about what you do, but what do you think gave you the most motivation just throughout your whole journey to like lead you to your career?
Um, that's a good question. I think I always loved science since I was a little girl. I had a microscope. My dad was a doctor. He brought home slides. I had a big influence from my dad. And then in science, it's kind of like there's lab techs, there's lab managers, and then there's this principal scientist. So in order to really make a change or really be discovering things and doing things, you'd have to get your PhD in science unless you were happy and content working for somebody. So I would tell you part of it was my ego. I wanted to be like the principal scientist person. Much like there's a nurse practitioner, there's a doctor, there's nurses, and it's kind of like that in the science world as well. So, I mean, I wanted to be a doctor, so then I went for shoot for the stars and went for the PhD. Initially, I thought I really wanted to get a job where I would have my own lab in an academic center, and I would also win a Nobel Prize. I'm not going to lie. I thought I really wanted that goal, but I quickly learned that it was really tough, hard for me to do that. So I think I kind of had a big ego maybe, and I had influence of my dad and things like that. Yeah. I would also say, especially for graduate school and even medicine, you got to love what you're doing. If you don't love what you're doing, if you don't love seeing patients every day and hear their complaints and all that, you're not going to love medicine. And if you don't love science, and if you're not curious and want to explore things, you're not going to like science because you're in it. You're really in it, The other thing I would tell you just real quick is I have a couple more minutes. Graduate school was super fun. Medical school is super fun. Everybody around you they're going to their regular job at a tech company, at Yahoo, at Facebook or whatever. But like you won't miss it because everybody around you is doing exactly what you're doing. So they're all at the same, and your new friend, like my 3 best friends are all from my graduate school days. They're all MDs, but I'm PhD. They were in it with me. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, it's a good time too.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your advice and your sharing your story with us. It's been really, really nice
Absolutely.
hearing all this.
If anybody has any questions or needs me to help them write personal statements or want advice or something like that, you can give them my email. It's syavrom@gmail.com.
Perfect. We can send it in the chat too.
Yeah, do you want me to send it? And
Oh
you
yeah,
can
that'd be
also
great.
you can
Thank you
also
so
look
much.
for me at on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
And I'll put in here my full name. Best of
Perfect.
luck
Thank you so
to
much.
you all, and I wish you much, much success. And reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming. Yeah, I hope everyone
you.
enjoyed. I think that was a really great seminar and we learned a lot from Miss Sharon. And yeah, thank you.
So
Thank you,
much.
guys. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.